He had worked his whole life to achieve the dream, a beautiful mansion in a neighborhood that was supposed to mean safety, respect, and belonging. But on the very day he pulled up to his own gate, everything shattered. Instead of a warm welcome, he was stopped, questioned, and treated like a stranger. Not because of anything he did, but because of the color of his skin. What unfolded next would leave an entire community stunned and expose a painful truth about power, prejudice, and pride. The only question is, how far would they go? David Johnson was not just any man. He was a symbol of resilience. Years of hard work, discipline, and sacrifice had finally paid off. From long nights at the office to serving his country overseas, David had built a life most could only dream of. His proudest achievement was the mansion that now stood as a testament to his success, a place where he hoped to give his family peace, comfort, and the sense of belonging he had once been denied. The mansion sat in an exclusive neighborhood, lined with manicured lawns, tall gates, and the quiet hum of privilege. To outsiders, it looked like the perfect picture of the American dream. But beneath that polished surface, not everyone saw David as the rightful owner of that dream. Neighbors whispered, some stared longer than they should, and while most stayed silent, David could feel the weight of eyes that questioned if he truly belonged. He brushed it off. After all, success should speak louder than prejudice. But fate had a way of proving otherwise. On that particular afternoon, as he drove up to his own gate, he didn't expect resistance. He didn't expect suspicion. And he certainly didn't expect to be challenged at the very entrance of his home. What began as a simple return to the place he called his sanctuary was about to spiral into a moment that would reveal just how deep old prejudices still ran, no matter how high someone climbed. As David pulled up to his gate, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. He rolled down his window, expecting the usual seamless entry into his property. But instead of the gate opening, a security guard stepped forward, hand raised in a commanding stop. The guard's eyes narrowed. "This is a private community," he said flatly. His tone wasn't curious, it was accusatory. David calmly replied, "I live here. That's my house, right there." He pointed toward the mansion beyond the gate, the place he had poured his entire life into. But the guard didn't move. Instead, his expression hardened. Something inside David twisted. He'd seen that look before, the silent calculation of someone deciding whether you belonged or not. The guard crossed his arms. "You'll need to provide proof. ID. Mail. Something that shows you're not trespassing." Proof? At his own home? David could feel the sting of humiliation rising in his chest. He had already endured countless moments like this. Questioned in boardrooms, followed in stores, doubted in neighborhoods where others walked freely. But here, at the gate of his own mansion, it cut deeper than ever. He reached for his wallet, pulling out his driver's license, sliding it across. The guard barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "This doesn't prove residency." David's pulse quickened. The mansion itself, standing proudly behind him, should have been proof enough. Yet here he was, being treated like an intruder in his own sanctuary. Cars began to slow behind him, neighbors peering out of windows, whispers forming like wildfire. He could feel the narrative shifting before his very eyes. Not as David Johnson, decorated veteran and accomplished professional, but as the black man causing trouble at the gate. Minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. The guard muttered into his radio, calling for backup. Soon, 2 more HOA representatives arrived, their faces tight with suspicion. They didn't ask if David needed help. They didn't offer courtesy. They surrounded his car as though containing a threat. The humiliation boiled into anger, but David forced himself to stay calm. He knew too well how quickly anger could be twisted into justification. One of the HOA members leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. "Sir, if you don't leave, we'll have to escalate this further." Escalate. The word echoed like a warning bell. He wasn't sure what they meant. Police, confrontation, or something worse. But he understood the message clearly. In their eyes, he didn't belong. David clenched the steering wheel. He could leave, drive away, and pretend this never happened. Or he could stand firm, not just for himself, but for every moment someone had been told they didn't belong where they had earned the right to be. Taking a deep breath, he reached for his phone. His fingers hovered for a moment before dialing. If they wanted escalation, they were about to get it, but not in the way they expected. Because David wasn't just a man in a mansion. He was something far more than they had ever imagined. And within minutes, the HOA would find out exactly who they had challenged. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with silence. Faced with undeniable truth, the guard stepped back, his authority stripped bare. The neighbors who had watched with suspicion now watched with shame. And David, standing tall at the gate of his own mansion, didn't celebrate victory. He simply walked forward because belonging in your own home should never be a fight to win. That night, he entered his house, but the weight of the experience lingered. He had faced enemies on battlefields across the world, yet the deepest wound came not from war, but from prejudice in the very place meant to offer peace. It was a reminder that no matter how high you climb, racism has a way of trying to drag you back down. But his story didn't end with humiliation. It became a spark. Neighbors who once looked at him with suspicion now looked at themselves, questioning their silence, their biases, their part in the unspoken system that allowed this to happen. And for those watching from afar, David's ordeal echoed a painful truth. This wasn't just his story. It was the story of countless others denied dignity, safety, and respect simply because of the color of their skin. Racism doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers at gates, hides in policies, or lurks in sideways glances. But its impact cuts just as deep. So the question remains, not just for David's neighborhood, but for all of us. How many more lives will be measured not by their worth, but by their skin? And when the next man, woman, or child is stopped at a gate they already own, will we stay silent, or finally open the door?